What'll I do when you are far away and I am blue? What'll I do when I'm alone with only dreams of you that won't come true? What'll I do that won't come true? What'll I do?
Murray Ritchie can almost taste the title until he's accused of rape.
I'm wasted, Jack! I'm not going another year. You said it yourself enough times. I'm old now. This was my time!
No, you sit my boy up. You feel...
You wanted Murray Ritchie nicked, I know that much. You paid Ronnie money.
Don't you make threats to me.
Tom Bell and Stephen Waddington star in Linda LaPlante's Seconds Out. Screen 1 in 15 minutes.
Nigeria is a nation of traders. The latest trade is drugs.
I lost everything I've ever worked for in my life.
£1,000, for 200 grams.
These are the condoms containing cocaine.
They gave me 8 years.
In their letters, when they were writing me, then they would ask me, Mommy, come back home, we want to see you.
I don't know if we can stop it now because I'm really getting upset now.
Mules, Inside Story, Wednesday 9:30 on 1.
Now, on BBC One, at 9:10, the news with Martyn Lewis.
An Israeli El Al jumbo jet has crashed onto a block of flats in Amsterdam. There's a huge fire and dozens of people are feared dead. The jet was a 747 cargo plane and the crew of 3 are also thought to have died. First reports spoke of a bomb on board. Now the authorities say the cause was engine failure. Good evening. A Boeing 747 carrying cargo for the Israeli airline El Al and fully laden with fuel crashed into a high-rise block of flats in Amsterdam tonight. The 9-story building, containing some 200 apartments, was engulfed with flames, and between 100 and 150 people are feared dead, with emergency services stretched to the limit. Police say at least 40 people have been killed, including the 3-man crew and their only passenger, a woman. Early reports that the jumbo jet had exploded in mid-air have been discounted. The Israeli government says the crash was an accident. The pilot apparently reported trouble with 2 engines after takeoff, turned back for an emergency landing with 1 engine on fire, but failed to make it. A major rescue operation has been going on all evening around the apartment block in the Amsterdam suburb of Bijlmermeer, just to the southeast of Schiphol Airport. The city authorities have mobilized their full-scale disaster plan.
A heavily populated residential area is burning out of control, set on fire by the El Al jet as it fell to the ground. The Bijlmermeer suburb of Amsterdam is directly under the flight path to Schiphol Airport when the 747 exploded in mid-air. Burning debris landed on top of hundreds of flats. As the flames spread quickly, many residents were unable to get out. The suburb is full of high-rise blocks. The fire consumed many of the buildings within minutes. The emergency services unable to prevent the blaze spreading. Dozens of casualties have been reported, many suffering bad burns. Early police statements talk about a large number of fatalities. This woman said the first she knew, there was a loud explosion in the sky and she saw a big fireball. Another witness says people all around her started screaming as the debris hit the ground. An amateur video shot within minutes of the crash shows the extent of the fire. Early reports said the El Al jet may have been brought down by a bomb. But in the past few minutes, it's been suggested that the crew reported some technical problems. Whatever the cause of this disaster, it's certainly one of the worst suffered by the Dutch. Jonathan Charles, BBC News, Brussels.
A short time ago, an officer with Amsterdam City Council, Joe Fimmons, described the area where the jumbo crashed.
It's a very densely populated area, very high flats, and the plane crashed into a building that is connected with a lot of different other buildings. It crashed hit the block of flats, and it exploded. And it's not certain at the moment because it's an El Al flight. There are some eyewitnesses who said that the plane crashed in the air, and others said or exploded in the air, while others say that it's only exploded when it crashed on the building.
Many of the casualties have been taken to the Academic Medical Centre in Amsterdam. Our reporter Chris West has just spoken to the hospital administrator, John Courtenay.
We have on this moment 25 injured patients, and the most what they have is injuries from burning. What we have done, we have an emergency plan from the hospital, and we can offer on this moment, on a very short period, 160 beds. You must understand, we get all the time new information, and we are prepared of the worst.
First reports of tonight's crash suggested there was a bomb on board. Later, that was discounted and engine failure was blamed. El Al has one of the world's best safety records. It hasn't had an accident in the last 20 years. Our Middle East correspondent Alex Brodie considers the ramifications of tonight's tragedy.
If the cause of this crash was a bomb, it will be the first, as far as we know, that has ever been got on board an El Al plane. El Al flights are routinely under armed guard, and the Israeli airline's own security is famous. On scheduled flights, passengers undergo detailed questioning. El Al security guards question particularly closely single women who might be innocent carriers, like the Irish woman who was given a bomb to carry aboard an El Al flight from London's Heathrow to Israel in 1986. It was El Al security which found the bomb. The Israelis are now saying tonight's crash looks not to have been a result of terrorism, but of an unusual engine failure.
El Al's safety record, on the whole, is absolutely first class. It would be certainly in the world's top 50 airlines for safety. Just to put that in context, there are some 500 medium to large airlines in the world, so it's pretty close to the top.
The Israelis are asking anguished questions tonight. What went wrong? This is their first crash in 22 years.
Well, we can go over now live to our Europe correspondent, Jonathan Charles. Jonathan, the early reports tonight talked of a suspected bomb. Can that now definitely be ruled out?
It does appear so. The most important thing now really is for the authorities to find the flight recorders, the so-called black boxes. They'll give the clue to what went wrong, but it seems fairly clear from what officials are saying that they believe it was a technical fault. The plane's last words from the captain were "Mayday, Mayday," and then that was it. All contact was lost.
It's more than 2 hours since the plane crashed. Do we have a clearer idea of the total number of casualties from the scene?
Police say hundreds of ambulances are heading to the scene, and many are there already. I think the problem really is that the apartment blocks had 100 to 150 people in them, perhaps at most. They don't know how many people were out for the night, and the difficulty will be then working out just how many people were in there at the time of the accident. But clearly, fatalities have been high.
Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. And we will, of course, bring you other details as they come in. Other news now. John Major's most senior cabinet colleagues have been defending his position as the Prime Minister and the cabinet prepare to face this week's party conference. Ministers have warned that Britain would be a laughingstock if it doesn't move quickly to approve the Maastricht Treaty. And they reiterated that tight public spending controls will now be at the centre of the battle against inflation.
The Tory chairman, Sir Norman Fowler, was checking final arrangements for a party conference that's desperately important for the Prime Minister. It'll indicate whether or not there's support for John Major's decision to hazard all on pressing ahead as soon as he can with ratification of the Maastricht Treaty. Despite tension in the party, Sir Norman remains upbeat.
You wait. I think you'll find that this will be a conference where the Conservative Party fights back.
Those ministers who are most enthusiastic about Europe have been wheeled out to warn of the
this country about that vacuum of leadership and the absolute abdication of responsibility that it would apply throughout the community, where to the whole of the community's leaders, John Major has given his word on the authority of the Cabinet and on the authority of Parliament. It would make Britain a laughingstock.
The priority is to stop the pound sliding further, and harsh economic policies are forecast, although ministers say tax increases are the last resort.
Our success has been that we've always controlled the public finances so that we've got taxation down. Therefore, our policy now, our aim now, I think will deliver, is to get public expenditure under control so there's no need for tax increases.
The Essex constituency of Basildon proved to be the first election night pointer to a fourth Conservative victory. 6 months later, it's in key marginals like this that ministers fear support for Mr Major is hemorrhaging away. In Basildon this Sunday lunchtime, the problems of the economy loomed far larger than the argument over Maastricht. Against a background of job cuts and falling house prices, the local MP and constituency chairman hope the Tory conference will provide at least some idea of how the government intends to get the country out of recession.
Oh look, it would be less than honest of me to try and kid anyone that my constituents feel that these are wonderful times. Yes, they are disappointed to a degree about what's happened recently in terms of the British economy, but they believe that John Major is an honest, decent man and will now show his strong, firm leadership.
Labour say the lack of a clear economic policy strengthens their demand for Mr Major to sack Mr Lamont.
We've got a Chancellor who's got no credibility with the financial markets or with the public, and we've got a Prime Minister who's showing absolutely no leadership, and I think it's about time that we had a Prime Minister who's prepared to set out what the economic policy of the government is, instead of trying to appease every faction within the Conservative Party.
A year ago, Mr Lamont was forecasting the green shoots of economic spring. When he speaks on Thursday, the conference will want to know what went wrong. But friends say Mr Lamont has no intention of resigning.
The leader of the Inkatha Freedom Party, Chief Buthelezi, has demanded that the African National Congress disband its army before he returns to the negotiating table with President de Klerk. Earlier, security forces and UN observers were able to head off a potential confrontation when Inkatha tried to stop a march by ANC supporters in the KwaZulu homeland.
They had come to begin the task of burying KwaZulu, a homeland the ANC says is a place of repression and fear. The organisation claims that people are afraid to attend marches like this. A history of bitter warfare between the ANC and Inkatha has reduced politics here to a brutal trial of strength. As far as the ANC is concerned, this march is about securing free political activity in KwaZulu. But Chief Buthelezi and his Inkatha supporters don't see it that way. Rather, they view the demonstration as a dangerous incitement, an invasion of their territory. Waiting with their weapons of war just a few streets away were supporters of Chief Buthelezi. Many of them bussed in for the day. We were warned to keep our distance. The security forces formed a barrier between the two groups, allowing UN observers to shuttle back and forth in a desperate effort to avert bloodshed. Eventually, it was the ANC which gave in, but a spokesman warned that next time his side would be better prepared. And he said the march on Chief Buthelezi's capital, Ulundi, would go ahead. In the present atmosphere, such a march has the potential for massive confrontation. Fergal Keane, BBC News, KwaZulu.
President Chissano of Mozambique has signed a peace treaty in Rome with the leader of the Renamo rebels to end 16 years of civil war. But it may still prove difficult to stop the fighting. Both armies must be disarmed and disbanded, with the countryside devastated by war, drought and famine.
The signing of the treaty brings to a formal end 16 years of civil war in Mozambique, a conflict that's devastated the country and left over 1 million people dead. President Chissano and the guerrilla leader Alfonso da Clama hailed this as the beginning of a new era, a treaty, they said, that gave the precious and noble gift of peace. The signing is important to the whole of Africa. Countries like Zimbabwe need a peaceful Mozambique in order to reach the sea. Now the years of fighting between government forces and the Renamo rebels backed by South Africa could be coming to an end. But rebuilding the shattered country will be a mammoth task.
It's a huge job. If you go to Mozambique, hardly any road is functioning, all the schools are burnt down, hospitals are destroyed, millions of people are displaced, there are 1 million refugees in neighbouring countries. It's a huge job. It's like a Marshall Plan is needed to overcome these problems.
The fight can now begin in earnest to stop the scourge of famine, which threatens 3 million people, a fifth of the population. War is to blame. While money was spent on guns and bullets, men, women and children starved. Yet Mozambique is rich in resources, and the hope now is that the two armies, still locked in conflict, can be demobilized within 6 months, though there's no certainty that can be done.
4 more relief planes carrying 40 tons of food and medicine have arrived in the Bosnian capital Sarajevo, but 3 other flights had to be cancelled because of bad weather. The airlift was restarted yesterday after being suspended for a month following the shooting down of an Italian cargo plane.
For the second consecutive day, the pilot's main problem was not sporadic fighting around Sarajevo airport, but thick low clouds and poor visibility. The conditions deteriorated as the day progressed, limiting the number of flights possible. The 4 planes carried 35 tons of American military rations and 5 tons of medicines. The 1st Canadian Hercules also brought in some parts for the radar system, which will help to keep the planes flying into Sarajevo airport during the winter. The relief effort was boosted by a land convoy from the town of Vitez, 40 miles away, which brought 160 tons of food, including wheat flour and beans. The United Nations warehouses, which have been empty for some time now, are slowly being replenished. The UNHCR hopes to distribute the new supplies tomorrow. The heavy rain which drenched Sarajevo made the daily task of scavenging doubly miserable. The city has been without mains water for over a fortnight. Scores of people queued patiently on a pipe over a small stream to fill their buckets and containers. It's a dangerously exposed location that's frequently shelled, but the citizens of Sarajevo have to trust to fate or go without. Cooking has to be done outside with wood because there's no electricity. Sarajevo in the rain is cold, uncomfortable and bleak. The snows will be here soon and the city will be in an even more desperate state. Malcolm Brabant, BBC News, Sarajevo.
The Russian Defense Minister Pavel Grachov has warned Georgia that taking control of Russian military hardware based in the Republic could provoke a clash with his armed forces. Yesterday, Georgia's State Council announced it would use Russian military hardware in its battle against rebels in the Black Sea region of Abkhazia. Earlier, a helicopter carrying the Georgian leader Edward Shevardnadze to Sukhumi was attacked by rebel forces.
With exactly a week to go before parliamentary elections in Georgia, civil war is once again tearing this small republic apart. Hundreds of people have been killed since the Georgian leader, Edward Shevardnadze, sent his troops into the breakaway region of Abkhazia 7 weeks ago. But the separatists there have not yet been beaten. In fact, they've been winning territory. Today, Mr. Shevardnadze appeared at a rally of his supporters in the western city of Sukhumi. A little earlier, he had narrowly escaped assassination. The rebels had opened fire on his helicopter as he toured the war zone. The former Soviet foreign minister says he's at a loss to end the fighting, and in his despair, he's even said he might resign. Thousands of refugees are fleeing from the latest upsurge in violence around the town of Gagra, many of them heading across the border into Russia. The civil war has produced a diplomatic crisis between Tbilisi and Moscow. The Russians are furious that all their military hardware in Georgia has now been commandeered by Mr. Shevardnadze's government, and Russia's defense minister Pavel Grachov is warning it could spark off clashes with his troops. Edward Shevardnadze believes next week's elections may stabilize the situation, but the Abkhazian separatists are boycotting the poll, and the bloodshed looks all too likely to continue. Ben Brown, BBC News, Moscow.
Doctors at the Frenchay Hospital in Bristol say the condition of the entertainer Leslie Crowther has improved slightly, but he's still critically ill. Mr. Crowther suffered serious head injuries when his Rolls-Royce overturned last night on the M5 motorway. Tonight's main news again. Dutch police now say that up to 200 people could have died when an El Al jumbo jet crashed into apartments in Amsterdam. The aircraft was a cargo plane with 3 crew and 1 passenger on board. That's the BBC News Tonight. Good night.
Good evening. It's to Europe we have to look at the moment to see what weather we can expect coming our way, because there's a huge area of low pressure just down in the western basin of the Mediterranean. Large areas of cloud, rain and showers continuing to swirl around that. And on the edge of it, we're dragging some northeasterly winds in, and that means some cloud coming across the North Sea. That will continue overnight. It may bring a handful of showers with it. Most areas will be dry though. What few showers there are most likely to turn up in these eastern areas. Many regions seeing some clear spells, especially for Northern Ireland and for Scotland, where it may well turn quite misty with some patches of fog and even a touch of ground frost overnight as well. Meanwhile, over England and Wales, temperatures generally not getting down much below 9 degrees due to the strength of the northeast winds. They're going to remain strong and fairly blustery throughout tomorrow, whereas we'll see light winds up to the north, closest to the area of high pressure. Though the low pressure area will begin to show its hand late in the day, there's a chance of a little rain moving into the extreme southeast towards the end of the evening. Many areas dry again tomorrow though. The best of the sunshine is likely across in the west, with only 1 or 2 showers, again mostly across in the east, though that's not to rule the odd one out popping up further west. Will feel fairly chilly though, a bit colder than today.
Starting on 2 in a little over 10 minutes, 3 more guests line up as their favourite historical characters for a word in your era. Followed at 10:10 by the film drama starring Meryl Streep as a Polish survivor of a Nazi concentration camp, with Kevin Kline as a lover, based on the bestseller by William Styron, Sophie's Choice.
Any aggro from any of you, and you'll be on your way.
Oh dear, somebody might come up.
Finding it tough on Civvies Street, are we, Frank?
These guys are armed.
Must be your lucky night.
Got yours, mate.
Old scores are settled in Civvies, Tuesday 9:30 on BBC One.
And more now from the prolific and powerful pen of Linda LaPlante in our Screen One presentation, as she turns her attention to the tough world of boxing. Stephen Waddington and Tom Bell are the stars as we invite you to take a ringside seat, but don't guarantee a good, clean fight. Seconds out.
Rider, get it up. Yeah.